Hello everyone, this is going to be my tier list for Realm of the Elderlings. There's going to be a full video review, but a full video review is quite a bit of work, and I don't feel like doing it right now. So I'm going to do this tier list. In terms of spoilers, what I think I've kind of settled on is I'm going to go through relatively quickly, spoiler-free. So those of you who are just curious how much I like each book, but you either have not started the series or are only halfway through the series and are kind of wondering how I think the second half or second 4 out of 5 or second 3 out of 5 or the last trilogy compares to all the other series. And then I'm going to kind of go through again, spoilery, which I will give a lot of warning for, and there will be timestamps, and kind of explain, maybe just mention some specific moments that make some books stand out. Anyway, let's get into it. So, Realm of the Elderlings. I've got my basic tiers, and the standard disclaimer is in order in that this is not S tier for books in general, and this is not D tier for books in general. This is an S tier Realm of the Elderlings books, which is, of course, for me, a much, much, much higher standard. So, there's going to be some rather painful books that I have to put in B tier that I really love, but we will get to that. And we start with book 1. What order these end up in? Whatever. They're alphabetical. I'm going to pluck from them, and I'm going to go through in series order. Anyway, we start with Assassin's Apprentice, book 1. And this is definitely on the lower end for me. I by no means dislike Assassin's Apprentice, but I think Fitz isn't as interesting as he becomes later. And it has some weird pacing issues where it covers a day that doesn't seem that important in really specific detail, minute by minute for an entire chapter, and then it'll just skip over things that sound really important. And I think Hobbs' prose kind of consistently improves. It's still excellent in this book, but I don't like it as much as I do in future books. So I think it's going to go in C tier, I believe. Next up, we have Royal Assassin. And Royal Assassin is incredible. And I think it was an honorable mention for my top books of the year. And for a lot of series, it would be an S. But I actually think I have to put it in B. Oh my god. That hurts. Royal Assassin. What else hurts is reading the end of Royal Assassin, and the middle of Royal Assassin, and sometimes the start of Royal Assassin. I love Royal Assassin. I still think Fitz is not my favorite character ever in these. I like Fitz as a protagonist in Farseer, but to me the side characters stand out more in Farseer. But oh boy, do they stand out! You got the Fool, Night Eyes, Burrich, Jade, Ketrican, just so many. Great politics, incredibly hard-hitting ending, and it truly hurts me to put this in B tier, but there's just too many books I'd put above it, so there it has to be. And next up, we have Assassin's Quest, and this I think is the most divisive book in the entire series. This is still my favorite start to any book ever. 3 chapters in, it's in here, 10 out of 10. And I've never had the first, 80 pages of it matched. But then the middle kind of drags it down. And then the ending is good again. And really, I felt Assassin's Quest just didn't play to Hobbs' strengths as an author, especially at the time, which I think is character work and relationships. I actually do like it more than Assassin's Apprentice. It has lower lows, but also very high highs. This is one of those that I totally get people who really dislike it, because the lows are low, but I also totally get people who just love it, because damn, it hits some high highs. And there are still parts of this book that I still remember and have stuck with me, but it was also a bit of a slog to get through at times. And that concludes Farseer, and we kind of got it in B and C, and we move on to the Liveship traders. and we start with Ship of Magic, which, of course, goes straight into S tier. When I read it, and until about 23 hours and 43 minutes ago, this was my favorite book of all time. So I gave it a 10 out of 10. And this still, I think, is the most impressive book in the series. It starts with a completely new cast of characters, and they're all so human, so interesting, so distinctive, and I got invested in all of them instantly. And then the way this book builds and maintains tension is incredible. It has maybe the most hateable character in fiction in Kyle Haven. Fuck Kyle. He sucks and is terrible and bad. And yeah, so obviously I have a review of Ship of Magic on my channel where I basically just praise it because this is just, at the time it was my favorite book of all time, and it was hard to beat, and I might juggle back and forth between it and the book that I think is past it, but, which is on here. But yeah, this easily gets into S. And that moves on to The Mad Ship, which is book 2 in Liveship, which is also completely incredible. This, I think, Hobb really shows off her kind of strange relationships and how perfect the dialogue is. There's some relationships in here that are just so unique. There's also kind of a mini love triangle thing going on. It's short, but that really is the only thing that makes it. There's just like a, 50-page section about a third of the way in that makes it my least favorite of Liveship books. Still gave it like 9.7 out of 10. Still think it's a masterpiece. All the characters are out of this world. The dialogue is perfect. The prose is amazing. The world building is insane. The foreshadowing is amazing. It's well paced. It's got a great ending. I prefer the ending of Ship of Magic. Ship of Magic, I think, is an amazing ending. But The Mad Ship is still incredible. And almost as much as it hurt me to put Royal Assassin in B, it's ridiculous that I have to put The Mad Ship in A, because this is one of my favorite books ever, but this is the world we live in. And next we get to Ship of Destiny, the final book in the Liveship Traders series. And I love Ship of Destiny. This book just made me feel all the emotions. It's similar for all of Liveship. I think it didn't quite maintain tension as perfectly as Ship of Magic, but it was basically a perfect ending to this trilogy. I gave it 9.9 out of 10. Do I have to put this in A? Man, 9.9 out of 10. But other than other Hobb books, the only book I like more than this is Words of Radiance. And I think I can't even put it in S tier if I want to maintain a somewhat bell curve. Fuck it. A. Damn, that's unfortunate. Wow. This hurts. Anyway, and next we come to Fool's Errand. Fool's Errand is the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy, and it is the book that made me go from Fitz is a good protagonist to Fitz will probably end up contending for my favorite character ever. And now that I finished the series, I'm going to make a top 10 favorite characters ever list, and you'll see Fitz on it. And yeah, he's pretty damn high up there. And this book, originally I gave it 9.8, but the more I sat on it, the better it got. This is really, the emotional moments in this have really stuck with me. It's one of those things that just only Hobb can do. The start of it, very little happens in the first 10 chapters other than people talking, but it's the best damn people talking you'll ever get. And then the pacing really ramps up, and it's actually pretty action-packed for a Hobb book. It's not action-packed for like a non-Hobb book, but it's action-packed for a Hobb book. But a moment just stuck with me, so I actually, like, a month later decided I actually liked this more than every book other than Ship of Magic, and I moved it up to a 10 out of 10 as well. So it's also going in S tier because I gave it 10 out of 10. So if a 10 out of 10 ever doesn't go in S tier, it's a pretty lame 10 out of 10. Yeah. And book 2 in that series is The Golden Fool, which Has an amazing start. Does, I think, tiny bit spin its wheels in the middle. Also, warning about the Golden Fool. Don't read the back of the book. It's supposed to something like 400 pages in. Like, anyways. But this, I think, did have some pacing issues. So I'm going to put it behind Royal Assassin in B tier. I think I do like Royal Assassin more than the Golden Fool. This, of the 6-book stretch of Liveship and Tawny Man, this is the only one I like less than Royal Assassin, which is pretty insane considering how much I like Royal Assassin. This still has amazing character work, amazing character moments, a pretty damn good like ending and falling action. It's still amazing. The ending didn't quite hit as hard emotionally as like Royal Assassin, which is one reason it's a little bit behind. And that moves us to Fool's Fate, the conclusion of the Tawny Man trilogy. And this was, at the time, I thought could have been basically a perfect end to the series. After reading Rain Wilds and Fitz and the Fool, I kind of know that, like, okay, there's some stuff that it seems obvious to me in hindsight were going to happen in the future, but I didn't know that at the time. I think the first third of this book is still very, very good. It focuses on a character a lot in the first third, and I very much like that character, but he's not my favorite Realm of the Elderlings character. Then the last third of this and the falling action and the resolution is as close to perfect as I've read. But either way, I am going to put it behind the Mad Ship, but in A tier, above Royal Assassin. I think I gave it 9.6 out of 10, so I think I'm being consistent with my ratings. I don't remember perfectly. But I know this is a lot of people's favorite Realm of the Elderlings book. I very, very much like it. I do like Fool's Errand more. Fool's Errand is my favorite book in the series. I'll explain why when I go through spoilery pretty quickly. I know I said in the intro that the spoiler-free part would be the quick part. It's probably going to be spoiler part is going to be quick. Spoiler-free will be not quick. And now, at this point, you may be noticing that the D tier is pretty empty. And you may remember me saying, hey, Jake, you said this was for Robin Hobb, so you do have to have a D tier. It's pretty lame to just be like, none of them are in D tier, because you said it's a D tier Hobb book. And yeah, that's because Dragon Keeper's in D. Dragon Keeper is meh. It's fine. It was pretty disappointing, though. The characters, they're all distinctive, but I didn't really get invested in them. I just kind of kept waiting for it to get good, and it never did. It is easily my least favorite in the Rain Wilds, and it's pretty easily my least favorite Realm of the Elderlings book. So we're going to move on to Dragon Haven, which has one plot line that I could barely stand, but everything else I thought was much better than Dragon Keeper, and the ending was pretty damn good. Both of these books really could have been a lot shorter, though, but Dragon Haven, I think, is much closer to Assassin's Apprentice than it is to Dragon Keeper. I actually did like the book. There was just one plot line in it that was pretty painful. And that plot line continues to be pretty painful in City of Dragons. But the rest of City of Dragons is actually, I really like the rest of City of Dragons. It also has some Liveship characters playing a much more prominent role, which instantly boosts it up. So I actually like City of Dragons more than Assassin's Apprentice. So the bottom 4 is not going to be all Rainwild books. I thought this was a really solid book, but it's just, even Hobb's prose didn't feel as good. I will say, in terms of world building, the Rain Wilds is incredible, and in terms of events that happen, it's super important for the entire events of the series, so you can't skip it, you do have to read it, but it is good. Like, even on its own, and you'll see where Blood of Dragons goes, even on its own, I would read the Rain Wilds as a series. It just feels lackluster in compared to everything else. And then Blood of Dragons is legitimately a really fantastic book. Like, there's that plot line that I mentioned. I guess I can say the name of the character I don't like. They're never in here more. I think Timara is pretty easily my least favorite Hobb character. And they still are pretty frustrating to read about. But if you just cut Timara, this would be like here. And I know putting a book in B doesn't look that impressive, but I mean, this is on the same tier as Royal Assassin. And if you've read only Farseer, you know that Royal Assassin, I mean, Royal Assassin's pretty damn good. But I am going to put it here instead. I like quite a bit more than Assassin's Quest, quite a bit less than Golden Fool. It's actually funny that this is the only Hob book that I gave 8 point something, which, I mean, most series that... There's a lot of series that just live in the 8 point something range, but the Hob books are either... None of the others in 8. And... Man, this book maintains tension fantastically. It has some crazy shit that happens. Some great character arcs. And it's just a wonderful book. And it really turned Rain Wilds from, that was fine, to, okay, that was pretty good. But that being said, it's still easily my least favorite of the Hob series. But next we get to Fool's Assassin. And this book is basically just, I mean, it's not just a slice of life book, but it's very much a slice of life book. And it introduces a new character who's one of my favorite Hob characters, and I'm not going to say who it is, but if you've read the book, you know. Let's just put it this way. Fool's Assassin, I'm going to put up in A tier. I don't know if I like it more or less than Fool's Fate. Probably less. Like, this is easily the best slice of life book I've ever read. It has a ton of great foreshadowing. I was pretty on point for predicting things, but it's not like it's obvious what will happen. It's, you notice foreshadowing, and then it's very satisfying when you're right, if you're right. And then, like always with Hob books, it hit me in the feels many a time. We're back to Fitz. Obviously, all the, like, titles that have assassin or fool, we are back to Fitz, and it's brilliant, and yeah, it's very much a slice of life, but it's so good. Really Hob showing off her, like, relationship writing and character writing to just an absurd degree. And next we have Fool's Quest, which in terms of plotting, I think some of the Liveship books are more tightly plotted. But I think it's the most tightly plotted Fitz book. It also, these, like, Fitz and the Fool, I think feel like the most unique Fitz books, where, like, Golden Fool clearly reminds me of Royal Assassin, and Fool's Fate clearly reminds me of Assassin's Quest. Fool's Errand is somewhat unique, but Fool's Quest feels pretty unique. I think Assassin's Fate feels like the most unique Hob book, but Fool's Quest, very tightly plotted, doesn't quite hit me in the feels as well as these A and S tier books do, which all hit me in the feels hard. But I think it's my favorite middle Fitz book. I like the Madship more. I'm going to put it in B, above Royal Assassin. That feels right. And I feel like I can say the Fool's in it. It's called Fool's Quest. I think this might be my favorite book for the Fool, and I think the last trilogy is my favorite trilogy for the Fool. Anyway, magnificently plotted book. Still, the character work, like the cast of side characters in a first-person book, it's out of this world. I think Tawny Man for the Fitz books is my favorite for Fitz, and then Fitz and the Fool is where the side characters shine the strongest, and Fitz is only a little bit behind. And then Farseer, the side characters are, I think, almost as strong, and especially like the new side characters, because obviously everyone is new, and it introduces some favorites. But I think the final trilogy is where the side characters shine the strongest, and Fitz is still incredible. And next we get to Assassin's Fate, which I finished right now as I'm recording at 11:51 p.m., almost exactly 24 hours ago. And, well, basically this. As far as I'm concerned, it's the best book I've ever read, and it's my favorite book of all time. The second last chapter is my favorite chapter of all time. This was so incredible, the way it brought together 16 books into a finale. It's also the longest book in the series. It's 360,000 words, and damn, it earned its page count. Like, Assassin's Quest is pretty damn long, and I'm the person that generally doesn't say books are too long. I'm generally the person who pushes back when people say this book should have been 200 pages shorter. But, I mean, Assassin's Quest could have been shorter. No way you can make Assassin's Fate shorter. I'm not willing to accept it from anyone if they say Assassin's Fate should have been shorter. And as much as I said Fool's Fate could have been like a perfect end to the series, I thought that when I read Fool's Fate, but after reading Assassin's Fate, Assassin's Fate is the perfect end to the series, and Fool's Fate isn't, because if it ends in Fool's Fate, then it doesn't end the way it ends in Assassin's Fate. I'm still not okay from reading this book. I still have not completely recovered, but it's as close to a perfect ending as I've read. And yeah, I mean, we're ending with my favorite book of all time. So that concludes the spoiler-free. In terms of series, Liveship is still probably my favorite. And then probably Fitz and the Fool, and then Tawny Man, and then Farseer, and then Rainwild's in last. But they're all good. And now we are going to move to spoilers. And once again, I'm going to start with Farseer. So if you've read through the series, you can quit when you get to where I am. And I'm just going to quickly talk about like my favorite moments of each series. So if you've not read anything, step away. I would probably recommend stopping. Like, if you're mid-series, I wouldn't try and quit it halfway through unless you've got the computer open, because I'm not going to take pauses between each book, but I will give you time to click away in between each series. So, Farseer, we got Assassin's Apprentice. We're meeting basically all the characters that are going to be your good friends or enemies for a long time. We meet the Fool, we meet Fitz. I think meeting Patience and Patience saying how Fitz should have been hers, in hindsight, is one of my favorite moments of this book. I feel like on reread, there's a good chance this moves up. I think once I know everyone already, a lot of the moments that didn't hit as hard emotionally will hit more. The specific thing I was talking about before is it spends like an entire chapter basically taking care of Lady Time, who turns out to actually be Chade. And that's like an entire chapter. And it's not even like relating to assassinating. It's just like cleaning chamber pots. And then in one goddamn sentence, it's like, over the next month, I killed 16 people. And I'm like, can we reverse that? Can we get a chapter of him killing 16 people and a sentence for taking care of Lady Time? And it's that kind of stuff that was also somewhat annoying. Also, Farseer in general sometimes has the issue with the magic system of Fitz is as good with the skill as he needs to be. And that just gets a little bit annoying. Moving on to Royal Assassin. The most controversial part of this book is Molly and Fitz's relationship with Molly. I like Molly. I don't love Molly. Like, I'm never going to put Molly in my top, like, Realm of the Elderlings characters. I think people say like she's super unreasonable in this book, and I totally say where she's coming from, but I think that's partially because we know Fitz's justification, so we know why he's making the decisions that he is. She has no idea. So imagine from her perspective, he's just a pretty shit boyfriend who just doesn't really spend time with her, because she doesn't know it's because he's trying to like preserve the kingdom and the king and all this stuff. She's just like, oh, he's just not very reliable. And then obviously the ending of Royal Assassin is so painful. So many good lines with the Fool in this book. I forget if it was Assassin's Apprentice or Royal Assassin. I think it was Assassin's Apprentice where we first heard, do not do what you cannot undo until you've considered what you cannot do once you've done it. And there's the great line from the Fool about history and about how each person can make an impact. That's probably going to be in my reading for the series review. So many goods with the Fool. And obviously we get introduced to Night Eyes, who is, of course, by far the best animal companion in the genre. It isn't even close. If I ever make an animal companions tier list, I'm going to have, like, probably Mouse from Dresden in S tier, and then I'm going to have 2 empty tiers above it, and then I'm going to have Night Eyes. that's just, you can look forward to that. I'm probably not ever going to do it. It's just not worth a video. But Night Eyes is the top of that. And it's like, Night Eyes is amazing because most animal companions that we love, it's because we love animals. But Night Eyes actually has like a deep character with flaws and development and well-written relationships. I love Night Eyes' relationship with Ketrican, which we see more in Assassin's Quest. And Assassin's Quest is probably the most Night Eyes, you get a lot of Night Eyes in Assassin's Quest. He's really the only named character you talk to that we already knew for like a 400-page stretch, which is what kind of annoys me about Assassin's Quest. Hob leaned way more into the magical elements and way less into the relationships for the entire middle of the book. But the Night Eyes stuff is just so good. I still remember there's the part where like Night Eyes goes to live with a pack and Fitz just thinks they've split up, and later when like he's skill dreaming, he just like it just says a chapter ends with, and I saw a wolf running endlessly, and I love Night Eyes so much, and he's so good in this book. The ending, I think, hit the emotional punches it was trying to. It's also like the magical resolutions. It's not like something you get in a Sanderson book where it's like it's revealed how the solution, and then you're like, oh, that was so obvious in hindsight, and that makes so much sense. I love Verity's skilling, though, and obviously Verity's ending is pretty heartbreaking. This is one of those, it's really flawed, but it's got some great stuff, and also the beginning of Fitz waking up and the wolf, and his conversation with Burrich, where he's like, the life I didn't even want, and then Burrich coming back and thinking he was dead. The start of this is so incredible. There's also the weird thing in this book where every girl wants to fuck Fitz and then gets rejected, and everyone, for some reason, women especially, all seem to handle rejection terribly in this series. Does anyone else notice that? But it's especially in Assassin's Quest, and that kind of gets a little bit eye-rolly. This came up in Alex Nieves' Discord, and that's that in the illustrations for Assassin's Quest, Fitz looks like he's pretty hot. Like, he's a pretty handsome, attractive guy, and I'm like, he better be, because if he isn't, it's a plot hole why everyone wanted to fuck him. Anyway, that is going to be Farseer spoilers. If you've only read Farseer, click away now, and I am going to move on to Liveship. And we have Ship of Magic, which was my favorite book ever. We start with Kennet, and I remember reading this and like some kind of madman, like writing down all the information in Discord that we were learning about the characters. And the characterization in this book is just out of this world. Like how quickly you understand who the people are of Kennet, Wintro, Althea, Ronica, and even, I want to say Ephron Vestrit is super impressive in terms of characterization. That man has like 5 lines of dialogue, and man, his death hurt me. Like, that hit. When he dies on the Vivacia, and Althea is like, kind of has the pretty human reaction of like, my dad had to die for this boat to live, but it's not. And then it's like, okay, this wasn't caused by his death. This is the work of his life. And both Althea and Wintro in this book, and I guess I should say we also learn who Malta is very quickly, but both Althea and Wintro in this book are just so out of this world incredible, while Kennet is one of the most complex characters I've read, and probably the best antagonist in the genre. And meanwhile, you have Kyle, the most hateable man in the universe. And the thing that makes Kyle so hateable, other than he's a very relatable antagonist in that, like, he's the petty middle manager who got promoted, who's let power go to his head. But when you see him talking not to Althea, embarrassing that I've forgotten the name of the point of view of his wife, even though she's a great character, but you all know who I mean. His logic is so fucked up, but it also kind of makes sense from his perspective why he thinks the way that he is. And I hate him so much, and I wish they just killed him then. And And then also, like, there's the Vivacia with Wintro, and I love Wintro's chapters in Ship of Magic. One of my favorite single book character arcs in the entire genre. And this is where I think Wintro kind of peaked in the series for me, and maybe Althea as well, which is why it's my favorite in the series. The tension in the Althea scenes is out of this world. Anyways, I've raved enough about Ship of Magic in the past. I need to move on. Then the Mad Ship. I think the strongest aspect of the Mad Ship is the relationship between Wintro and Kennet. Is so shockingly well written, because it's such a strange relationship to be able to perfectly capture with dialogue. The end with, like, near the end with She Who Remembers is pretty fantastic. And also Malta's character arc in here is pretty incredible, where she kind of slowly goes from almost like an antagonist to someone you're kind of rooting for. She's so calculating and anyways. And then, you know, the stuff with Althea and the Paragon is also great. There's the mini love triangle with Althea, Brashen, and the other guy, the guy on the Ophelia. Also Ophelia. All the boats are wonderful. I love the live ships. And then Ship of Destiny, I think, is just divisive, because a lot of people don't like the choice of Kennet raping Althea in the end, or near the end. And I totally get that. That was such a horrifying scene to read. Even though in terms of, like, descriptions, it wasn't particularly graphic, it was so just emotionally horrifying. And man, I totally get if you read it and that kind of ruins the character arc for you and you don't like it, but I thought it was so well handled. But also, just leading up to that, so much of that book is so perfect, and I love it so much. Kennet is such a terrible person. And obviously, especially after he rapes Althea, I'm mostly just cheering for him to die. But also, like, when he goes on the Paragon and has the conversation with him, I legitimately feel horrible for what he's been through, despite the fact that he's a terrible person. He's what I was promised Abercrombie characters would be, in that I was, like, told, like, yeah, you know, you'll know they're terrible people, but you'll be, like, super invested in what happens to them. That didn't really happen in the first law for me. They were incredibly interesting people. I also didn't really care when they died. Kennet made me feel things, and I think is the best antagonist in the genre. And it's just such a ridiculously complex character. Also, he was totally partially forged, because feeding memories into a live ship is the same as feeding it into a stone dragon. And when Fitz was feeding his memories into a stone dragon in Assassin's Quest, the fool was like, don't do that, I don't want to, like... Night Eyes was like, I don't want to be bond with a forged one. So he's totally partially forged. Not completely forged, and that doesn't excuse his actions, but it's just an element of his character that adds to the sea of complexity that is Kennet. And we move on to Tawny Man and Fool's Errand. And the song... Oh, I'll give people to click away for spoilers. Spoilers for Tawny Man incoming. If you've only read Liveship and Farseer, click away. Anyway, the song... I challenge anyone who's read Fool's Errand to play the song Hey Brother by, like, FVDC or whatever, and to not think of Fitz and Night Eyes, and to not be sad. I every time I play that song now, it makes me cry a little bit. And it's just... Man, Night Eyes. And basically what I said, for Fool's Errand versus Fool's Fate, I feel like for the first third, we traded Night Eyes for Thick. And I like Thick. Thick is great, but Thick is not Night Eyes. And it's also maybe, I love the Fool in here, and everyone showing up and kind of life kicking off for Fitz again. It's extremely well paced, and Fitz himself, I found much more vivid and interesting of a character compared to Farseer. I was invested in Fitz and Farseer, but I didn't find him to be the most interesting person. I thought he was much more interesting here, and his relationships continue to just be out of this world incredible. And yeah, and you know, Night Eyes, poor Night Eyes, is just one of the reasons Fool's Errand got 10 out of 10. And then the Golden Fool, it starts great with the dealing with grief. The thing on the back of the book is it said that they were going after Icefire, which you don't learn till like page 300 and something. It's pretty dumb that that's on the back of the book. And it's not like it's obvious that that's the direction the book is going in. Like, that came out of nowhere. So, the back of the book spoiled that for me. I read it like 150 pages in. I thought I'd learned my lesson to not read the back of the book until I was like pretty far in. And so I figured 200 pages. I think it was on page 200 and something would be safe, but nope. Anyway, so for the rest of them, I didn't read the back of the book until I was done the book. But there's kind of the middle where Fitz is just kind of failing at everything, and it gets a tiny bit repetitive. But then he goes and rescues people from the Piebald Prince, gets skill healed. There's going to be the expedition to Ashleval, I don't know, to behead Icefire. So this is, I think, the weakest of Tawny Man, but it's still incredible. Also, like, Fitz feud with the Fool. I totally get why it's there, but I just want them to get along a little more. I don't care if they get along. I want them to talk. And Lord Golden, like, when the Fool is acting like Lord Golden, is actually my least favorite version of the Fool. I really like Amber. I know, but Lord Golden's kind of... So, ironically, Tawny Man, of the 3 Fitz trilogies, is probably my least favorite for the Fool, except Fool's Fate. I mean, the Fool is brilliant in Fool's Fate. Obviously, I'm gonna about spoil Fool's Fate, but Fitz carrying around the Fool's body, and then the resurrection, so good. And then Tawny Man ends with, I am content. What an incredible ending to an amazing trilogy. And we get to Rainwilds. Fucking Timara, man. Like, I don't care if you're gonna fuck. I didn't give the warning. Spoilers for Rainwilds. I'm mostly just gonna complain about Timara. I am also gonna spoil things. Anyway, Timara. I don't care if you fuck Rapskull, or Tats. I don't care at all. I don't. Please, why do you exist? Anyways, that's really my main complaint for Rainwilds. I think Cedric's a great character. Alice I found distinctive but not super interesting in Dragon Keeper, but I really liked her in the other 3. I think one of the most interesting things about Rainwilds is that the antagonist is very rarely directly trying to make the protagonist's lives worse. And it's one of the examples that comes up a lot in Realm of the Elderlings of the ripple effect of selfishness, in that one man's selfishness causes like 3/4 of the problems, like as a side effect for this entire series. And I really like that about it, and it's why I think the Duke is kind of an interesting role for the antagonist to play, because he's not like a direct antagonist. It's also one reason Dragon Keeper was kind of boring for me, is that, like, Hest, I just don't find that interesting of an antagonist. And then the Malta stuff in Blood of Dragons was so good. Where, that scene where, like, she gets captured and gives labor, like, that was horrifically tense. And then trying to get Thrawn healed was so emotional. And then when it looked like Tingtalia wasn't gonna make it, but she did. It was great. And then the ending where they kind of... Oh, and I forgot about Selden Vestrit. Also loved his chapters. Blood of Dragons, other than Timara's bullshit, I think is just a wonderful book. And finally, now for the people who have caught up to Rainwilds but have not read Fitz and the Fool, now is your chance to leave, and I can talk about how much I love B. Farseer. Probably like a top 5 Realm of the Elderlings character for me, and I love her point of views. My predictions for B being like a white prophet, I predicted that almost instantly. My predictions for B, pretty on point in general for this entire trilogy, and that was satisfying. But B's relationship with Fitz, and I mean the entire thing, gotta say, for Fool's Assassin, just there's like the first chapter where the messengers show up and dies, and then they cut like 5 years later there's mention that Patience died. And I was just like, what? Patience? You're just glossing over that? Why? And then you had Molly's pregnancy that no one believed, that took like 2 years. Which basically, like, when B was born and was very small and pale and took like 2 years in the womb, I was like, okay, white prophets are super long-lived. The fool looked like a 20-year-old when we know he was actually much older. So, B took, Molly was only like sure that she was pregnant for 2 years, so was actually probably pregnant for like 3 years. And I like figured out, I was like, all right, so yeah, this makes sense. And B's totally a white prophet. And then it gets the messenger. It's like the unexpected son. And I'm like, hey, B got the prophecy about the butterfly cloak gender wrong. Maybe the gender's wrong again. Obviously, we learn later that this is big boy spoilers coming up, everyone. If you haven't read Through Assassin's Fate, you shouldn't be here. We learn that B is not actually the unexpected son, so what's wrong about that? She is the destroyer, and Fitz actually is the unexpected son. Oops. Anyway, I figured that out later. And then we move on to Fool's Quest, which is so different from Fool's Assassin, which is mostly like slice of life. And it's with Fitz stabbing the Fool. Also, I did totally, before the Fool said it, I was like, oh shit, I bet they planned Fitz stabbing the Fool so they could get B, who they think is the unexpected son. Which was an oof. And we get to Fool's Quest, and almost the most like, it almost starts if you can just forget that B's been captured. Like, what's going on with Fitz is pretty heartwarming. He gets named Prince Fitz Chivalry Farseer. I love that chapter. And then, of course, he goes to Withy Woods. And that is pretty rough. Goes on the quest to try and rescue B. I actually start to like Shun, who was so annoying in Fool's Assassin, was almost the antagonist of the story, despite the fact that she's not actually like a bad guy, she's just kind of a bitch. No, she's spoiled. Well, she's annoying. She's very annoying. Anyway, I actually start to like her in this book, and then B saves her. Why couldn't she save B? When the Chalcedeans like, oh, we'll take you to their people, I was just like, oh, they mean Dwalia, don't they? And they did. And we get to Assassin's Fate. Fucking Dwalia. B kept escaping, and Dwalia would not just fuck off. Anyway, and then meanwhile, on the other hand, you had Fitz's journey through like Kelsingra, on the Paragon. I love Fitz getting to the Paragon, and it's like Spider-Man pointing at himself. And we get Amber kind of destroying the trade of Liveship trade forever. And we get great relation stuff up between the Fitz and the Fool and Purr and Spark. And not only are all like the classic characters amazing, I also want to mention I think Fool's Quest, and Fool's Assassin were my single favorite Shade books. I thought it was pretty obvious that Shun was Fade's kid. I did not see Vigilant coming, but these were my single two favorite Shade books. Obviously, it doesn't appear as much in Assassin's Fate, but the journey to Clares and then the rescue and Wolf Father helping out B was so amazing, and already had this as one of my favorite books. But then the thing that really elevated this to my favorite book ever was, so Fitz lives and he goes through the stone, and where does he end up? But where Verity carved his dragons. And it took a second to register, but then kind of Night Eyes points out the rock. And I remember the last line of Assassin's Quest. We dreamed of carving a dragon. And he mentioned he got worms earlier. And I'm like, oh, he got hit by the dart. It's the traitor's death. So he carves the Wolf of the West in what is my single favorite chapter in all of fiction. When the Fool joins in to the Wolf, such like a beautiful and also bittersweet moment of Fitz, Night Eyes, and the Fool are combined into one being, but also the Fool is dying unnecessarily, and B is truly without a father. She also didn't really like the Fool anyways, which was pretty painful. And then we get a final line to match I Am Content, and it will also be the final line of this video. And it is Kettricken smiled.